Well, after a long chase, here we have at 10:30 IST and 12 noon EST, Rosalind Sedacca is a divorce and co-parenting coach, recognized as the voice of child-centered divorce. She is the founder of the Child Centered Divorce Network, which provides valuable resources for parents who are facing, moving through, or transitioning after divorce. She's also the author of How Do I Tell the Kids About the Divorce? Number two, create a storybook guide to preparing your children with love, and co-host of Divorce, Dating, and Empowered radio show and podcast. That is not all. Rosalind is an expert blogger for numerous divorce, parenting, dating websites, and blogs, and wrote numerous ebooks and e-courses for parenting success strategies for parents. Wow, that's a lot. Well, Rosalind, thank you very much for accepting my request.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be talking with you.
So here we hop on.
Why not?
A little curiosity about how you started. What was the driving force or reason to become a divorce and co-parenting coach? Or where and when did this thought evolve or emanate?
It happened because of my own divorce. I had a marriage. I was married for close to 20 years. The marriage was going sour, and I was more and more eager to move out of the marriage and break it off, because there was a lot of aggravation, a lot of conflict and tension. And I had a son who ultimately was 11 years old when I finally got the nerve to make that decision after years of therapy and doubts and fears and anxiety about making that move. And finally, I decided to do that. And ultimately, my ex and I learned how to co-parent and raise my son through his teen years and into adulthood. And one day, years and years later, when my son was in his early 20s, he came to me one day out of the blue and he said, "You know, Ma, you really did a great job with your divorce. You and Daddy were really wonderful. And I wanted to thank you, because most of my friends whose parents divorced either hated their parents or were very angry at them. And I thought you guys did a good job." And I let out such a sigh of relief. I was holding on to so much guilt and tension about, did I mess my child up by having this divorce? And it was an amazing awakening moment for me, because I realized that I had learned so much and I had so much to share, because there was so little available back then. This was in the 90s. That it became the catalyst for my founding the Child Centered Divorce Network, ultimately becoming a divorce and co-parenting coach, and then using my background as a writer to write several books and ebooks and courses on, especially on co-parenting success strategies, anger management for co-parents, breaking divorce news to children, and all of those important factors that weigh into the equation. So it all stemmed from my own life experience, and my son honored me by writing the foreword to my book.
Wow, a foreword to your book. That's too good to be true.
Yes.
From the little information gathered about you personally, I would like to know, what were your experiences during your separation, and how did it affect you emotionally, academically as a child and a teenager? How did you handle it?
Well, in my own life, my parents didn't divorce, and they stayed together for the sake of the kids, which was very common then. Divorce was not common when I was growing up. And it was a huge mistake, because my parents should have divorced. My parents got along terribly. They were very mismatched, and there was constant tension and fighting in my home life. So my childhood, even though I wasn't a child of divorce, my childhood was riddled with insecurity and anxiety and tension from the anger all around me, the parents who did not love each other. And I had a lot of childhood wounds. And what I learned as I was raising my son and experiencing his life as a child of divorce, I realized that my parents make so many of the same mistakes that divorced parents make, even though my parents weren't divorced. So I really learned a lot about the emotional and psychological impact of divorce on children through my own bad childhood and through trying to protect my own son from having that same impact in his childhood. And thankfully, from the positive response I've gotten from him, it worked out very well. And that's what I'm hoping for all the clients that I work with, that they can have what I call happy endings and their children moving ahead without the scars and the wounds that happen when divorce is handled poorly.
So true. I wouldn't agree more. I just hit that particular keyword when you say toxic relationships, when you live in a toxic relationship and the impact of living and being raised in such relationships, the impact of such stories over children, and not only them, even on parents. Moving on to women, single parents, with many parents unable to handle the outcome of separation, divorce, physical assault or punishments to children are common. What is your say on this?
Well, as parents, we are here to love and protect our children and to be role models for them in how to handle conflicts in life. And life inevitably is filled with conflicts for everyone. So when parents have difficult issues and challenges and trying situations, such as a divorce, they have to be very mindful that it's never the children's fault. Even if parents are fighting about the children, it's not their fault. The children are always innocent in adult issues. And we have to protect our children, not take our rage and frustration out on the children because it's not their fault. And what are they learning from the way we handle issues? Do we scream and hit and rage? Are we physically abusive? Are we mentally abusive? Or are we trying to share with children that there are always options and decisions that are better to make, and teach them how to stop and think, process their thoughts, and then make decisions that are going to be the least harmful for everyone around. Kids learn from what we do more than from what we say. True. So it's really important for us to be very careful and monitor the way we behave, because otherwise we have generation after generation of toxic family relationships in which there's a lot of physical abuse and disrespect for the children, and children deserve better than that.
Absolutely. How are single parents, usually mothers, impacted by divorce or separation, mutually and economically?
Yes, the impact is tremendous. And of course, it's different for every family, but the economic toll is very dramatic, because suddenly you were a family where you had adults who were taking care of bringing in enough income to support the family's lifestyle. And when that's changed and you're now in two homes and needing to support two lifestyles separately, it can be very difficult and challenging for the families to get along. And sometimes the women and the children will stay in the initial home, but they can't always afford to keep up and maintain that home. Sometimes the other parent, very often it's the father, will move to a smaller home and his lifestyle is dramatically changed, or the children don't have enough room to visit. So there's many things that come into play. And on top of all of the logistics and the financial challenges are the emotional challenges. Parents are affected by their self-esteem. What did I do wrong? Why did I make bad decisions? Am I hurting and wounding and harming my children psychologically? Parents are concerned about, is there going to be a future for me? Is there going to be happiness ahead? Can I find another relationship even though I have children? Will someone want to be with me again? Can I afford to maintain my two families and two households? So there are dramatic issues, and it's really helpful to reach out to professionals who specialize in those kinds of things. There's also lots of books and programs and e-courses on the internet that are low cost for people who can't afford to spend a lot, but you can read and get a lot of guidance and support, so that the important thing is that you're making mindful, conscious, aware decisions, not only for yourself, but always for your children as well at the same time.
Yeah, well, this is so overwhelming. How are children of different ages affected by a divorce or separation?
Yeah, that's such an important question.
Absolutely.
So little children, infants and toddlers and young children obviously don't understand what's going on, but they pick up the energy. If there's tension at home, if there's anger and frustration or violence, children will pick up on that. And so it doesn't matter whether they cognitively understand what's happening, they know something is off, and it affects their nervous system, and children will cry a lot, be very anxious, unresponsive. The joy in life is taken from them because they're being exposed to things that they need not be exposed to. As children get older, they pick up more on things, and they may be confused, but they're always aware of the tension, of the anxiety in the home, of the moods of their parents. So when you get into elementary school, the kids start asking pertinent questions, and parents have to be prepared to talk in a candid way, but we always must be speaking to children in an age-appropriate manner, because you can't talk to a 5-year-old like a 15-year-old, and the children will be asking questions, and you don't want to be lying. And at the same time, most professionals agree that you don't want to share adult information with children, because children cannot help or fix your relationship problems. If it was easy enough for a child to fix, you wouldn't be having those problems. These are complex emotional issues. And so we have to explain to our children that their parents are taking care of things and working things out, and they don't have to be worrying that they're okay, and things are going to move ahead in a good way. And then we have to make sure the parents have the skills and the resources to make that happen. So as the kids get older, very often children who are in the middle school and high school ages will start taking sides. They have a history maybe of years before the divorce, before things went sour. And so they hold parents accountable. They may take sides, they may express more anger and frustration. They may point the finger at you and ask pertinent questions. And so you have to be prepared for even more direct confrontation from children. We also want to be very mindful that as children get older and they express their emotional confusion or frustration or anger about the situation, that some children's personalities will have them turn inward. They'll become very quiet, introspective. They'll move away from family and friends and become loners. Sometimes there's even suicidal thoughts because they're so upset and they don't know how to handle it. Other kids will act out and start misbehaving. Their grades in school will deteriorate. They'll become bullying or aggressive and hurt other kids. And these are expressions of inner discord either way. It's just that some kids turn inward, some turn outward, but parents have to be very alert and aware of changes in their children's personalities. Sometimes younger kids will revert to bedwetting and childish behaviors that they hadn't expressed for years. These are all signs and symptoms that the kids are aware that something is wrong, and it's up to parents to step up and reassure them. What children need to hear, the best thing is for them to hear that both parents are in agreement, telling them that it's going to be okay because we are taking care of things. We are looking into the issues. We are making decisions that's going to be good for everyone in the family. And it's always good for parents to have the mindset that this is about change in our family, but we'll always be a family, even though mom and dad may not be your living in the same home and you're living in two separate homes. We're still your parents. We still love you. We'll always love you. And that's the most important thing. Children who hear messages like that handle the divorce much better than children who hear different kind of messages where the parents are pointing the fingers and disrespecting one another and saying bad things about one another in disrespectful ways.
That's really sad. Well, what's important for parents to know and understand before breaking the divorce information to their children?
Yeah, so parents have choices in how they can approach this. And what you want to understand is that children are confused and feeling very, very insecure when they hear about a divorce. What's a divorce? What is that going to mean? Will mom and dad stop loving me and divorce me at some point in time? If they stop loving each other, maybe they'll stop loving me. Was the divorce my fault? Is it because I didn't get good grades in school, or I hit my brother last month, or I didn't listen to you and I was a bad child? Kids don't know how exactly to handle the information they're getting, and so they get very confused. So parents need to, first of all, tell children over and over again that this is not your fault, no matter what's going on. This is between your two parents, and remind them that they are innocent and not at fault. They need to remind the children that mom and dad will always love them, no matter what, and that mom and dad will always be their mom and dad, even if one or both parents should remarry and get into another serious relationship. That doesn't mean that the children don't have to have a relationship with their biological parents. The more we can keep that intact, the easier it is for children to adjust. It doesn't always happen that way, but ideally it's always best for the children. We also want to talk to the children about the fact that this is a change in our family, just like the seasons change and the grades in school change and our hairstyles change and our sports teams change. This is a change in life, and life is full of changes. So if we look at the divorce as a change in our family rather than something horrible and dire that's happening, it gives kids a sense of peace and security that they need at this time. The more security and peace of mind we could give to our children, the better they can adjust and adapt to whatever is different in their life. And children do adapt as long as their parents are in alignment with them, ensuring that life is going to be okay and there's good things that will be happening ahead. And that gives them a sense of security and confidence that I'm confused right now about what the future will bring, but it doesn't mean that the future is bad. That's what children really need to understand.
Great. What are some of the most important divorce mistakes that parents must avoid?
Thank you for asking that. That's so important. So first of all, studies throughout the world have proven that conflict is the most damaging thing that children can be exposed to, exactly, whether they're in an intact married family or a divorced family. So keep conflict away from kids. That means don't fight around your kids, near them, on the phone, in the other room. You want to just keep your fights away from the children, and the children will do much better, because conflict changes their nervous system and impacts them psychologically. Another huge mistake is bad mouthing the other parent. It's very tempting, if you believe you've been hurt by your ex, and you believe your ex is a bad person, a disrespectful person, a hurtful person, it's tempting to want to share that with your children. And it's tempting to say, if your mom wasn't an alcoholic, we wouldn't be having a divorce. If your dad didn't have an affair, we wouldn't be having this divorce, and all of those kinds of things. You could share that with your friends and with professionals, but don't talk to your children about that, because your children innately love both parents. They don't want to hear it. They can't understand the complexities and the nuances of what's happening. And so it hurts them to hear or see one parent putting down the other parent, and they're going to want to defend that other parent. And it creates a lot of emotional turmoil for children. So that's a huge mistake. You also never want to confide adult information in children, as I've mentioned previously, because they can't comprehend it and they can't fix it. And the rule is, if your child can't do anything to heal the situation, don't share it with them, because they're too young to comprehend. Even teenagers can't understand the complexity of what brought a divorce about. You also don't want your children to be used as messengers. It's very easy to want to say, tell daddy that I'm going to be an hour late on Friday to pick you up, or tell mommy I've changed the plans and I can't see you on Saturday. But the truth is that children can make a mistake with the message just because they're children, or they can intentionally mismatch the messages because they are disliking one or both parents and they want to cause more trouble, and they have their own agenda. Whatever it isn't the child's responsibility to be your scheduling tool. And fortunately, there are many online scheduling tools that are low cost that you can use, or you could just text and email and use technology in any ways you can. If the phone isn't comfortable between two parents, then use some other technological ways of sharing messages so that the two of you are responsible and your children don't have the responsibility of doing those messages and making mistakes and getting involved in your conflict. It just isn't fair.
That's a lot of information. What are the best ways to successfully parent and co-parent after divorce?
So it's a challenge. There's no doubt about it. But the more both parents are on the same page together, the better off the children are, and the better off both sides of the co-parenting equation are. Life is just easier and smoother. So first, I suggest that you try to catch your co-parent doing something right and compliment them. Say something positive about it, because it's so easy to be in a co-parenting relationship where all you're doing is pointing the finger and said, you messed this up again, you did that wrong, why did you do that, you forgot to do that. And yes, there's going to be tension and conflict because you're divorced. Part of why you're divorced is that you don't get along that well. But if you try to find some ways before you accuse or get into a conflict, and just say something nice, thanks for doing this, I appreciate your doing that. It's a good way of showing your humanity and trying to create a more positive relationship. You also want to be as flexible as you can in co-parenting. In the United States, there's parenting plans that lawyers draw up that ultimately are part of the divorce equation. And in most countries, there's something similar with arrangements of days and times and schedules and who's doing what when and how the holidays are going to be handled. But life gets in the way. There's sickness, there's accidents, there's job issues. No one's life works on a schedule. And so if your ex is saying, listen, I just can't do this, something came up, can we move this? Can you do that? Can we try that? When you're flexible and amenable, then it's more likely that your co-parent will do the same favor for you. And what I want to remind all divorced parents is that co-parenting is a lifelong experience. It doesn't end when the divorce ends, it just begins. You have years and years ahead, decades ahead. Even when your children are adults, you're still co-parenting, and you're still involved in weddings and becoming grandparents and all the happy occasions in life. And you want to be there, and you want to be civilized, and you want to not stress your children out because you're two adults who can't handle being around each other in the same room, in the same environment. So it's up to us as parents to be as responsible as we can, and to think about every decision we make. Another great question to ask yourself as a co-parent is, would I be making the same parenting decision if we were still married? So that means if a parenting issue comes up regarding discipline, or how to celebrate a vacation, or whether to buy something special for a child, you want to think about, is this the same decision I would have made if we were still married? Or am I intentionally making a different decision because I want to hurt my ex? Because when your focus is on hurting your ex rather than what's best for your children, the outcome is never good, it's never clean, it's never right. And the children become pawns in between, and they're hurt. And that's so unnecessary. So you want to also ask yourself, do I love my children more than I may dislike or even hate my ex? Do I love my children more than I dislike my ex? And that answer has to be yes, because if it isn't, and your life is focused entirely on getting back and hurting that other person, your children are inevitably going to be hurt. And that's the source of so many toxic divorces, is adults who can't understand that they have to put their children's well-being first, that it's not about your being right, it's about what's best for your kids, so your kids don't get robbed of their childhood. It's very important to remember that when children are forced to think like adults because they get involved in your emotional drama, it harms them and it robs them of the innocence of childhood. Suddenly they're trying to protect mom or dad. Suddenly they're trying to be the little adult in the family. And they'll try to step up. But once a child understands adult information, they lost their childhood, the childhood innocence. And kids deserve to have childhood innocence as long as they possibly can. This is a tough world that we're living in. And we don't want our children to have to grow up prematurely because we are making selfish decisions that are harming our kids. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That is such a lot of learning, and that really rings a bell when I watch so many families with or without single parents. Now, coming close to something more important for me, you have a free ebook to our listeners. I've heard a lot about it. Could you tell me something about it?
Absolutely. It's called Post-Divorce Parenting, Success Strategies for Getting It Right. And it includes a lot of the concepts we've been talking about today, as well as many more, because when parents think first, they make better decisions. And when they remember that every decision they make is going to impact their children today, tomorrow, and long into the future, it can stop you in your tracks from making decisions that you might have made that were not going to be as conscious, that are more selfish, and that are more harmful for children. So this gives you a load of advice, and it's a free download. You just go to childcentereddivorce.com, and it's right on the homepage. You could add your email address, download the free ebook, and you'll have just a wealth of information on success strategies for co-parenting successfully. And what I always remind my clients is that your children will thank you when they're grown adults for you're not giving them the grievances that so many adults in our world are carrying because of their childhood being so disturbed by divorce done wrong. It doesn't have to be that case. And you want to give your children the gift of the best possible parenting despite divorce, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And finally, do you have any takeaway insights for us apart from all the volume that you've imparted?
I just want to emphasize the fact that if we remember that we are role models, it'll keep us on the right track, because our children are watching and learning from us, not from what we say, but what we do. And so be very careful about monitoring how you handle the challenges that are inevitable when you're going through divorce, co-parenting, new relationships, all of the things that lie ahead for people who are in the realm of divorce and separation. Remember that your children are innocent and they deserve the very best you could possibly give them. And also be willing to apologize. If you found that you've made some of the mistakes we've been talking about because you didn't know better, it's never too late to get eye level with your child, look them straight in the eye and say, you know, Mom, Dad made a mistake. I'm sorry I said that. I'm sorry I did that. I'm sorry I made that decision. I'm going to change things now. Please forgive me. Your children will learn if you can ask for forgiveness, they can ask for forgiveness. And that's a wonderful adult lesson that they can take with them for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely. That reminds me of the similar statement mentioned by Oprah in one of our shows with a couple of parents. So that was a deep dive into an oceanic information about co-parenting, divorce, children. That was really insightful. Thank you. Thank you, Rosalind. I shall always recall this and share it with as many people as possible.
I so appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you again.